Well, welcome. We're so glad to have you here for another one of my series of interviews for our UCLA class. It's a special education or the special issues in education class. And today with me, I have Evan Forster from Forster Thomas College and Career Educational Consulting. And he's going to explain to you exactly what he does, give you his background, and we're going to talk about some issues for some very special students that we're interested in. So Evan, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, we're Forster. I launched Forster Thomas Educational and Career Consulting. It's global now. The company began in 1995. I've been an educational consultant since that time. I was the college editor for 17 magazine, which is sort of how it began, even before that. And in 2002, or just in the beginning of 2002, I became the college advisor for chess in the schools in New York City, and I was the college advisor there for 13 years, in addition to Forster Thomas, all at the same time. And then in 2008, Forster Thomas launched Essay Busters, essaybusters.org. So you can find us at forsterthomas.com, Forster Thomas.com, or Essay Busters, like ghostbusters.org, where we work with students who have limited access to college admissions and college, and in general higher education. It's really difficult for them. So we have, two sides of the spectrum, and I've just been doing it for a very long time. We work with very specialized subgroups within the college admissions consulting process. So it could be everything from for hire, clients that are coming from Boston and to Bangladesh, to Beverly Hills, to Brooklyn, to our nonprofit side, which includes students, again, from all over the world, from Bangladesh and Guyana, and students of color, Black students, gay students, everything in between that you could possibly imagine on the planet. So that's what we are. That's what we do, and I think our purpose, and our purpose really, really has always been in every side of what we do, to transform the planet through access to education. That's what we do.
And and that is a very goal that we all share, and we all have a very strong passion, and I've known that you've had that passion for a long time. So I also know that you have a very strong interest and passion for students and their gender identity and gender equity. So if you're a counselor, you're sitting in your office and a student comes in and they tell you, I don't know what, they're unsure about what their sexual identity is, what do you tell them? What advice do you have for them?
Well, are you asking me in general, or with respect to college?
With respect to, well, it kind of goes both. I'm a high school student. They're experiencing this in high school, so that's going to transfer on to college. And how what would you say?
Well,
from both.
It's an interesting question. First of all, I would make sure, as an advisor, that let's just start here. If you're watching this and you haven't realized that I'm gay, you probably shouldn't be advising anybody at going to college. It would be kind of difficult not to get it. And I know a lot of people think, wow, that's ridiculous, I don't assume anything and whatever. I think I think that's just, that's nice and it's politically correct, but it's not, we're not in a perfect world yet. So, you might want to reconsider that. And I say this only because I think not always, of course, but, and myself included, I'll tell you a story about that. But when a student is having issues around gender, sexuality, these kinds of things. You just know. I mean, first of all, how can you be working with students in high school and not recognize up front that there are issues around sexuality?
Right.
Period. Gay, straight, wherever you may be on the sexuality spectrum, the gender spectrum. And so I am really, with that in mind, I'm really open about who I am. And I think I'm a parade just walking, okay? But that notwithstanding, I think that, and a very proud parade, but I think that the more open I am about who I am in my life, the more readily, help me if I'm not speaking English properly, but the more readily the student is going to open up and really express who he or she is, so that you can better help that student make informed decisions about where they're going to college. Because what's this part of the whole process about if it's not clearly about having them get, hopefully, to the best possible school that's a match and then actually stay there? Because I'm not going to get into stats of how many kids stay in school, and I don't, I should have some stats about what happens to gay identified or transgender identified or whatever identified students, what the stats are for who stays in college. But I can, but I don't. So not readily. So when a student comes to me, I think it's my responsibility to already have, by the time they're talking about college with me, which for me is very often sophomore year, in both of my worlds, for-profit and nonprofit, especially in the nonprofit world where we're working with them on college, literally dedicated college classes so that they even understand what college is. I work with a really huge population of first generation students. And so, and if I'm, by the way, it's really my pleasure, Cindy, to have you go back on track, Evan, get back on track. But, the kids know me as Auntie Evan. So that's pretty much says it there. And so I think that creates an open space. Now, not everybody's Auntie Evan, okay? Right. But I think you have to, at this point in the game, you've got to have a rainbow flag up behind you, like you've got to have things that say, student, this is a safe place for you to be who you are. And they may or may not speak to you about it. So I've had students come to me where, let's remember, we're all incredibly busy, right? You're at a school. I'm sitting there at a program where I'm the college advisor, at Innovation High School, or recently, or Mesa to come for me, and other programs. And I'm sitting there and I've got all these things happening, all these kids. And like everyone else, we forget, especially I think here in the United States, we forget that kids have sexuality. We either forget it or we don't want to touch it. We don't want to get near it because we're afraid of it, especially my brothers and sisters who are, LGBTQ, RSTUVW, we're afraid, rightly so. We could lose our jobs. Who knows where you're working, or what the community is that you're in. I understand that it's very difficult. So you might not be able to be as open as I am in your community, but you can be authentic about who you are no matter what. And so when a student comes to me, and they're telling me, this is so terrible. This is forget about it, okay? I had a student, Daniel, who kept coming to me in the midst of all, what season of ours isn't insane. And he kept telling me about, do you remember Brokeback Mountain?
Oh.
The movie. His favorite movie. Here I am. I am thick as could be. I got, all this stuff going on. And I'm not hearing him. He did not present as stereotypically in any way, shape, or form gay. And I'm in the middle of a town, a city, where kids are, they're just like, they're you just, as David, my husband, always says, I can't tell anymore if anybody's gay. You can't, they're all, I mean, I have kids that come to me and say things like, well, could I write that I'm gay? Even though I'm not, I'm on the hockey team. I'm like, wait a minute, you got to put, no, I'm kidding. But, the thing is, and Danielle kept indicating to me that I wasn't listening. So I would say, first and foremost, you're asking me the question, what do I do, right? When a kid comes to me, listen, pay attention. I mean, he's a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful young man now, professional geologist, and he's trekking and this and that on Facebook. And I mean, for me, you couldn't put me in a tent if I need running water and 4 seasons, and I do not mean the outdoors, because I'm like that. But I wasn't looking, I wasn't seeing it. Now, if a student does come to me and identify, which is now, that was like a few years ago, and this whole, LGBTQ thing, it's just ramping up, right, Cindy? So when I say ramping up, I mean, people are just, it's such a big issue, right? It's come out and so with a full flurry that, like, if you are not reading, paying attention, a part of this, whether you're in a community that's very, right wing or left wing or whatever, because my business, as is Cindy's, as is yours, as the one you're getting into, to me, it's a, what is it? There's no, I mean, everybody gets to hire us. Everybody gets to come and work with me. We're for all, I don't even know what I'm trying to say, but you know what I mean? We just don't, like, we're everybody gets to work with us, and we don't have, like, you could be Muslim, Jewish, Republican, Democrat, gay, gray, green, blue, purple, from Mars. That's just, we deal with it all. Our responsibility is to help our students dig down deep and be authentic about who they are, so that they can get admissions officers or a college or a university or life, and later the world, to see what they have to offer. So that's the important thing. I digress, except to say, when a kid comes to me, and if they do identify, I have to consider things like, who are the parents? So let's do a little practice. Who are the parents that I should already know? If I don't, I want to get to know them. If he is first generation, for example, and they only speak Spanish in his house, you might bring the mother in and use whatever Spanish you can and just make her feel comfortable. Do what you can. If they're from a part of the country that's very, just conservative, but not conservative fiscally, and liberal socially, you might not have as much of a problem. Yeah. But I think there's a lot, at this age, students are glued to their parents. They're still in the middle of an individuation process. And I don't care what a parent says when they say something to me like, Cynthia and I are so close. We're like, brothers or sisters. I'm like, yeah, you think so. Okay. So you really need to be careful about who the parents are, understand where they're coming from. And your students, check yourself at the door to figure out what your belief system is, and think about a time in your life when you felt like you were other. When you thought you were, different. Try to remember that far back when you just felt scared and lonely and curious and wonderful, and all the things combined, and mostly scared and curious combined. And from that moment, you now start understanding what is the setting in which you might be able to, because I assume by now you've all worked on, because I'm going to say this right now, visit schools. This is not a remote job. You cannot do this on the internet yet. Right. You have to go to colleges and know, and yes, I can work remotely with a student. That's different. I still have to go to the schools. It's like imagine having a travel agent that has never been to, St. Louis, and they're going to tell you about where to stay. How?
Right. Right.
That's called Expedia. That's called Expedia. Anyway, I'm sorry. Did that answer it a little bit?
Yes, you did. You gave us a lot. And I love the fact that you referenced authenticity. One of the things that our class is looking at this week is how to have cultural authenticity. But you bring up a really good
Sorry, you cut
point.
out. You cut out just for a second.
Okay. That authenticity is really important. So we're talking about cultural authenticity, and having authenticity in yourself all together is important. So
I just think especially, and remember this, it's still, yes, in a perfect world, people don't put Jews down publicly as much, I guess. There are many, like I'm Jewish and, it's just, but we all agree at some level that it's not okay, or it's not okay to say things about, Muslims, or it's not okay. We kind of are in similar agreement for the most part. If you're not, I don't even know how to address you, but we all still have one agreement, no matter what you may think. And no matter how enlightened you may be, we all still have issues with sexuality. We have issues with our own sexuality, let alone, Johnny, who's 17 years old. And I mean, if you're a man watching this, just remember what that was like, and it's a very difficult place for both a young man and a young woman to be. I think it's safe to say that we still are, all of us in schools, it's still safe, actually. It's still okay to say words. When I say this, I mean, I know you're going to think, no, it is not okay to use the F word. And I'm not talking about F-U, blah, blah, blah. I'm talking about F-A-G-G, okay? I mean, I have no problem saying it. I won't say it here because you guys are UCLA coursework, so I'm not going to do that. But I will tell you that I have no problem using gay epithets. I have no problem using to clarify, until we are as freaked out by those words as we are by the N-word. The N-word, it just blows my mind that we call it that, because we don't get that we don't have the same level of consciousness or understanding or anger around gay epithets, lesbian, gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgender, queer. What am I missing? Help.
I don't know. There are a lot of alphabet letters. I was just reading about that.
So it is still really scary for these kids. And so you have to look at making a safe place. You have to be gender neutral when you're speaking to them. Mm-hmm. I know you're going to talk about being gender neutral. Do I need to talk about that? Do you want me to talk about that?
Yes, please do.
Cindy, do you want me to talk about being gender neutral or not?
Yes.
You're frozen.
I'm frozen. Can you hear me?
Now you're not.
Okay.
Do you want me to?
Yes. So.
So gender neutral is, you are, it's just yes or no on me talking about gender neutral.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So when you have a student coming to you, all students, this is the shocker for everybody, okay? You know how we've all been in there at our age, unless you're much younger than I am, and I'm 30. Be quiet, Cindy. I'm not 30, but I have a great doctor. Just saying. That's a whole other part of this business. I'll get in touch with me and I can explain to you why you have to look good. But anyway, what is really, we just don't understand that our students are walking through the, kids, teenagers, tweens, whatever, are walking through the planet bombarded, especially now by, so much information, sexual information, especially and we as parents rather are, how do I put this? We look at the world and we say things like like we have a little kid, his name, let's call him Mitchell, and Mitchell's 5 years old or 4 years old, and he's walking down the street with his dad, your dad, and he looks at a girl and dad nudges him and says something, give him a little nudge, and he goes, "Ooh, you like that girl, you like that girl." He teases. Inside of teasing is a celebration of sexuality. I hope you understand that. Teasing a boy about a girl is a celebration of his sexuality when he's a little kid, as it is with a girl with a boy, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he's a little bit older, she's a little bit older, and they have their first kiss. And it's the opposite sex, or it's they get to come home and have that conversation. That's a celebration of their sexuality. That's just no matter how you slice it. Imagine, I want you to take a moment, and I want you to imagine going through the world till you're 18, maybe older, definitely 18. Never, that whole part of your life does not exist. Ça n'existe pas. Just doesn't exist. You don't practice your sexuality. You don't deal with it. You don't play any reindeer games and mess up. Nothing. And you wonder why so many gay people, lesbian, bisexual, transgender, and anybody who's disenfranchised end up in such disastrous circumstances as adults.
Mm-hmm.
Get ill or transmit, all kinds of stuff that happens because they don't practice safety. Right. And I'm not talking about safety with a condom. I'm talking about, let's just assume for a minute that, I don't think my kids that I work with, I don't want them having sex until they're 50, but that's another conversation. But I want them to be able to celebrate that.
Right.
And I want them to go to a college where they can celebrate that. You can help celebrate it. I certainly am off track, but this is stuff for us to all consider as we're getting to know our students and talking about authenticity. So gender neutral means that when you come into the room and you say, "How's it going?" If they're upset about a relationship or they don't want to go to college because they don't want to leave, they've fallen in love, we assume things like the father did with Matthew a minute ago. Well, that he's straight. We just, it's the heterosexual assumption.
Mm-hmm.
The counselors, please, people, stop making the heterosexual assumption. That's number one. Just like I did with Daniel. I was like, he get to talk to me about Brokeback Mountain. I was blue in the face, and I assumed because he didn't display, he wasn't feminine, he wasn't anything that I knew to be gay. Mm-hmm. In my life, or transgendered or anything. So when you speak to students, you need to say, are you having a hard time with them, or what, to take out the he and the she. And I know that's hard. And I'm not one of those people that goes, you should write shim, he, she, whatever in an essay. I'm not that. I'm just saying, really try to get gender neutral about things so that they can be open about talking about their relationships and they can make a decision as to when they want to tell you.
Right. Right.
Opposed to Anthony Evan, who does, well, anyway, so go ahead. Sorry.
So are there organizations, groups, things that you could refer students or that we as counselors could refer our students to?
Well, I have a couple of things to say. You could refer them to the National Gay and Lesbian Task Force. You could refer them to Athlete Ally, like on Twitter. I'm just thinking off the top of my head. You could, and not the notes that I have, but I do. I'm going to send this to Cindy, and I'm going to make sure you guys have it. You want to look at the 25 top LGBTQ friendly colleges and universities as rated by something called the Campus Pride Index.
Right. Great.
That's a great place to look at. You could always, that's a wonderful place to look at. Princeton Review has some good stuff for, the least friendly. You need to be careful about some of this, stuff like that. I'm an old journalist, and I don't mean just 17 magazine. And by the way, I could tell you how to, if you want to also get in touch with me on how to decorate a dorm room. Hey, okay. I think that's very important. I'm serious. But be careful about a lot of the lists. that are not vetted or verified, you might want to go to your local gay and lesbian center, or if you're in, a GMHC, or in Los Angeles, there's gay, lesbian, transgender, bisexual. Again, it's a long name, but there are the local pride community houses, things of this nature are great places to go to, because they may be even more focused on your community, and because they might know your community, right? So be a little journalist about it and get in there. I think that you're probably going to have a hard time as a specific, sorry, I'm going to say it, but probably Brigham Young. And by the way, these are some of these schools, like, where they say they're not, they're not great for students who are lesbian, bisexual, transgender, etc. Again, you have to know the student and where they're at. Right. So you can't put down a school that might be phenomenal in theology, or might be incredible if, like, what the student really, I'm a very spiritual, religious person. I won't say that I'm not traditionally religious, but I couldn't be at a place where I couldn't walk into a chapel. Mm-hmm. That's who I am. Just because you're gay doesn't mean that you don't believe in God, or that you're, right. There are gay Catholics, and there are some really incredible schools. Like haven't really gone through all the list, but I'd say just offhand, I just had a student say to me how he hated his Jesuit high school. Just hated. And and so for that reason, and he's a brilliant kid, he refused to look at things like Georgetown. Mm-hmm. I'm like, are you kidding me? It'd be so great, So I just mentioned that because you have to. Why am I mentioning it, Cindy? Help me.
Well, just in terms of finding the places where the student's going to fit and what's important, and not looking at just a list, and that's one of the key things that we wanted to have you talk about is, what do they look for?
Well, okay, sorry. What do they look for? So you want to look at, like, just because I'm talking about a range now, I'm no longer talking about just gay or lesbian. Mm-hmm. I'm talking about, listen, you have to be cognizant of gender neutral housing, right? You have to be, you guys know what that is, right? Maybe not, I don't know, I might not have known, where young men can live with young women in a room. You can room with them, right? To tell you, for me and my very, very, very dear college friend, Tracy, I roomed with her. I mean, what was the difference in all reality? What was the difference between my being 18 or 19 when I waltzed into college, right? And so our second half of our first year, we got an apartment at Northwestern off campus. There we were, living together, running around, in and out of the bathroom. And kids today, it's just not who, that may make them feel really safe. I can tell you right now, I could not have roomed with another male. Thank God I had a single at Northwestern, mm-hmm. in the Forster Walker complex, having nothing to do with Foster, unfortunately. So, but boys are dirty. That's all I have to say. I don't want to live with them. But these are things to think about, for girls and boys and everybody. So look at that. I'm talking about I think that's a conversation that's a little bit later down the line. Right. But I do think you also need to talk about, because I have a list in front of me about, it's a really cool list, right? And it's got, like, I'm going to just say a few. It's LGBT friendly colleges and universities. It's the Campus Pride Index. And I'm like, it's got Montclair State. Who knew? Right?
Yeah, that's surprising.
Right? It's got Ohio State. Who knew? I love Ohio State, but who knew that part of it, right? That mm-hmm. That was considered by Campus Pride to be, friendly in this way. Boulder and Colorado. I'm going to keep going. Some other ones I'm looking at on the list that just, Wisconsin, Green Bay. Now, what I want to say is, if you get to the point where students opened up to you And yes, before we, go any further, you need to, again, we at Forster Thomas call it bartering. If you tell me, it's just like, hey, you hanging out with your girlfriends, and you tell them something, you share something, and you know what, I'm learning. I'm in a men's group, shockingly, and people will open up if you open up.
Mm-hmm.
Students will open up if you open up. Obviously, you need to be careful about what you talk about in your own life because you have a job to think about. So I'm not asking you to, take ridiculous risks. And I think there's appropriate behavior and non-appropriate or conversations, just like you would have with, just use your, use your kepi because it really makes sense, right? You wouldn't look. I don't know what y'all did when you were back in the 70s. You know what I'm saying? I'm just going to tell you, I'm not having that
I was in elementary school.
So was I. Thank you for reminding me. Whoops. I have to go now, but thank you very much. No, or the 80s, whatever. The point is we were, or the 60s. Okay, if I have to hear from you people in the 60s, how you did it all. But blah, blah, blah. But, the reality is I don't talk like I don't need to share that information.
Right.
I think that's counterproductive. I don't think that's cool. You're not going to, being liked, is if that's your goal, and this goes for every part of college consulting and advising. If being liked is your game, this is not for you.
Right. Well, that goal goes with having boundaries, and we all need to have boundaries and where we're at and what we're doing. So I think we've reached our time. Thank you so much, Evan. You've done a great job. Hopefully I haven't cut myself off. Can you still hear me?
No, I can hear you.
Okay.
Well, thank you so much for asking. If you want to ever ask about anything else, you're welcome. Cindy, we go back a while, so you're welcome to call me at any time. And you all can reach me at Forster Thomas, Educational and Career Consulting. We're on the internet. And the reason I mention it's not just because we do a lot of graduate school consulting, but I don't just slip that in. I want to make a point. You can get in touch with us. We're really good about that.
Yeah.
You know that.
Yeah.
If you have questions,
then and send me your list and your resources, and I'll post that for our class too.
You want all of the. Yeah, you got it. No problem.
Yep.
And I'll do a resource list and we can share that out with everybody. Thank you so much. I'm so happy that you're taking this on. We're blessed to have you.
Well, thank you. Thank you. You guys have a great time. Tell David hello for me, okay?
Yes. Bye-bye.
All right. Bye-bye.